Third person limited is one of the most popular point of view choices, and like 90% of new writers are doing it wrong. Is your narrator suddenly omniscient when it's convenient? Are you drowning your prose in filter words like she saw or he felt? Are you writing internal thoughts in third person when they should be in first? If any of this sounds familiar, let's fix that. If you're new here, my name is Brianna and I post writing videos every week on character development, world building, and other writing related things. I also make easy to use writing workbooks on my Etsy shop, so if you're interested, hit subscribe and feel free to follow me on Threads and Instagram. All links are in the description below. Today we're talking about 6 third-person limited mistakes new writers typically make. I made these mistakes when I started writing, and I've seen them in manuscripts that I've reviewed, but the great thing is that these errors are easy to fix, and I'll show you how. Before we jump into the mistakes, let's clarify what third-person limited actually is. Third-person limited is when your story is told by a narrator who focuses on only one character, and typically uses pronouns like he, she, or they. The key word here is limited. The narrator can only access the thoughts, feelings, and sensory experiences of that one character. Think of it like this. You're sitting behind your chosen character, experiencing everything they experience, but you're not inside their head like first person. You're close enough to feel their emotions and know their thoughts, but there's still a slight distance. This point of view is popular because it gives you the intimacy of first person without compromising narrative flexibility, which is the way you frame the narration, what observations you include, and external details around the character. Unlike first person, you have the option to step back slightly from the character when needed. You don't need to filter the narration through their direct senses, but you're still experiencing the story through that one person's perspective. So this perspective is great if you want that close personal connection with the protagonist or whoever's perspective you choose, while maintaining that flexibility. It's especially great for fantasy and sci-fi because readers can discover the world alongside your character and experience the wonder or confusion of magic systems or alien landscapes through their eyes. Now, there are 2 other types of third-person narration. There's third-person multiple and third-person omniscient, but I'll be making separate videos about those because they each have their own rules and limitations. Today, we're focusing specifically on third-person limited perspective. Let's talk about the 6 mistakes new writers typically make when writing in third-person limited perspective. The first mistake is creeping into omniscient narration and point of view drifting. This is the most common mistake I see with this point of view. It happens when your narrator suddenly knows things your point of view character couldn't possibly know, like what's happening in another room, what another character is thinking, or information your character hasn't discovered yet. A text example of this would be, while Emma anxiously searched the library for clues about her family's curse, her brother was 3 floors below in the dungeons, destroying any evidence that could prove their bloodline secret. She had no idea her entire family had been lying to her for years, and he feared what would happen if she found out. So here you have both omniscient creeping and point of view drifting. Narrating that her brother was below in the dungeons is omniscient narration, and you're drifting point of views because you're narrating that the brother is fearful of what will happen if she finds out. So the way you fix this is by asking yourself whether your point of view character could possibly know this right now. If the answer is no, cut it or find a way for them to learn it naturally. So you could revise this text by saying, Emma ran her fingers along the leather spines in the library, searching for any mention of her family's bloodline. Something felt wrong. Too many gaps in the records, too many missing pages. Every time she found a new clue, the answer was ripped out. Why did it seem like someone had deliberately removed anything that could explain her strange dreams? The second version keeps us firmly in Emma's perspective and her growing suspicions without revealing information that she couldn't know. Now, if you find yourself constantly drifting to others' perspectives or narrating information that your point of view character doesn't know, but doing that feels right for your story, then you might want to consider changing your perspective to either third-person limited or omniscient, as those might work better for your story. The second mistake is overinterpreting other characters' emotions. Similar to the first mistake, this happens when your point of view character magically knows what other characters are thinking or feeling, rather than making educated guesses based on what they can observe. You fix this by ensuring that your point of view character can only interpret body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice. They should make educated guesses, not definitive statements about another's internal state. An example of this would be writing, Thorn was relieved when Elena volunteered for the dangerous mission. He was grateful she'd spared him from having to face the dragon himself. This isn't that bad, except for the fact that the point of view character is Elena, not Thorn. So you want to rewrite this to something like, when Elena volunteered for the dangerous mission, Thorn's shoulders sagged with what looked like relief. He shot her a grateful nod, and she got him wiping sweat from his brow. Probably glad he doesn't have to face the dragon himself, she thought. This version shows that Elena is interpreting Thorn's reaction rather than stating his emotions as fact, and it clearly grounds the scene in her perspective. The third mistake is inconsistent narrative distance. This is when you randomly switch between close third person, which is a tight focus on the character, and distant third person, which is more removed and observational within the same scene. You fix this by establishing your narrative distance early on and then maintaining it. Decide how close to your character's thoughts and feelings you want to be, and then stick with that level throughout the scene. So instead of saying, the dragon's fire scorched David's armor like molten metal, he screamed in agony. The young knight struggled to raise his shield, his movements seeming clumsy with pain. Try rewriting it as, the dragon's fire scorched David's armor like molten molten metal. He screamed in agony, fighting against the searing heat as he struggled to raise his shield. Each movement sent fresh waves of burning pain through his muscles. This version maintains a consistent close distance and keeps us connected to David's physical experience throughout. The fourth mistake is overloading your narration with filter words. This is something you want to avoid in general, but this is really common in third-person narration specifically. Filter words are phrases like she saw, he thought, she noticed, they realized. While they're not always wrong, overusing them can create unnecessary distance between the reader and your point of view character, and it falls into the popular mistake of telling versus showing. This is a balance that's hard to strike because you don't want to overload your narration with filter words and you don't want to overload your narration with direct sensory description. But if you're noticing that you have too many filter words in a scene, try to cut them down so that it reveals a more direct experience of the scene. Your reader will understand what your point of view character is seeing, hearing, or feeling without you consistently telling them. So instead of saying, Marcus saw the dragon emerge from the cave, he heard its roar echoing off the mountain walls. He felt terror grip his heart as he realized he was trapped. Try rewriting it as, the dragon emerged from the cave, its massive form blocking out the sun. Its roar echoed off the mountain walls, a sound that seemed to shake the very rocks. Terror gripped Marcus's heart. He was trapped with nowhere to run. This version is much more immediate, much more immersive. We're experiencing the dragon encounter with Marcus instead of being told that he's experiencing it. The fifth mistake is writing direct internal thoughts in third person. When you want to directly state what your point of view character is thinking in a moment, those thoughts should be in first person and italicized, not written in third person like the rest of the narration. Because what you're doing is directly accessing your character's thoughts and pulling the thought out of them onto the narration. A character's internal thoughts should sound like how they talk to themselves in their head, using I and me instead of he, she, or they. So instead of writing, Elena wondered if she should trust the stranger. She thought that he seemed honest, but she had been wrong before. Try writing it as, Elena studied the stranger's face. Should I trust him? She wondered. He seems honest, but I've been wrong before. The italicized first-person thoughts feel more authentic and immediate than the third-person version. And the sixth and final mistake is not coloring your narration in the character's voice. Even though third-person limited uses a narrator, that narrator's voice should reflect your point of view character's personality, vocabulary, education level, and worldview. A street thief should narrate differently than a scholarly wizard. You want to let your character's personality influence how they observe and describe the world around them. So instead of saying, the opulent chamber was adorned with exquisite tapestries depicting scenes of profound historical significance, Jake entered cautiously, his skateboard tucked under his arm. Try writing it as, the room was seriously fancy, way fancier than anywhere Jake had ever been. Huge wall hanging showed old guys in armor doing important looking stuff. He clutched his skateboard tighter, suddenly feeling like he didn't belong. Now again, this depends on your character's vocabulary, personality, and way of speaking. It's very possible that Jake's tone of voice is the first example, but you need to make that clear to the reader beforehand. You want to reflect your character's personality and vocabulary throughout the narration, not just in the dialogue. Now there are a lot of great books that nail third-person limited narration, such as Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, 1984 by George Orwell, Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling, and The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. In all of these books, the characters' perspectives shape every aspect of the narration. So my top tips for excelling in third-person limited narration: 1. Pick one character and commit. Never drift into another character's perspective or become omniscient mid-scene. Everything must be filtered through your chosen point of view character. Let your character's voice color the narration. A soldier will notice different details than an artist. A teenager will describe things differently than a professor. Use this to your advantage and to build an authentic narrative voice. 3. Establish your point of view early. Make it clear whose perspective we're following within the first page or two of the book. 4. Limit filter words. Show experiences directly instead of constantly telling us what your character is seeing, feeling, or hearing. 5. Maintain a consistent narrative distance. Decide how close to your character's thoughts you want to be and stick with that level throughout the scene. And use the perspective as a storytelling tool. Your character will have blind spots, biases, and gaps in their knowledge. Use these to your advantage to create tension, surprises, and emotional impact. I hope this video helped you, and if you're thinking about writing in first-person point of view, watch this video next to know which 6 mistakes to avoid. And if you're looking for affordable writing workbooks that don't compromise your creative freedom, feel free to check out my Etsy shop, linked in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next chapter.